Welcome to the Speed League podcast. I'm Kelly Hansen. I'm here with Ryan Berkman. San Francisco Supercross was
A
maybe.
bit muddy.
I'm trying to think of when the last time was I even saw a race that was that muddy. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I actually saw Christian Craig said that was his all-time worst condition race that he's ever been in his whole life. So that obviously says something. Someone that's been riding for his whole life, says that it was the worst. So that kind of
Yeah,
proves how gnarly it was.
yeah. A lot of those guys were saying it was really, really brutal. And I mean, yeah, you could tell just by the chaos that ensued. And so I mean, we'll go through and talk about some of the results. But in my first kind of initial impression and thought right now is I'm always so excited for the beginning of the season. And, Anaheim one's always chaotic, but then the week or two after that, you can kind of start to draw some conclusions about who's fast and who's not and how the season's going to go. But you
Zero
can't
conclusions
you
from
can't really
last
draw
night.
any conclusions from this. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we
And
got Shane McElrath, uh, finishing. What did he end up? Fourth place. Like that's not representative of how his season's going to go.
Phil Nicoletti battling for a podium. Chances are he's not going to battle for another podium for the rest of the season. So it's
Well, yeah, yeah, but yeah, he came close to. It was so sad, and he ended up getting beat by his teammate. But anyways, it was definitely interesting from, I mean, just a points perspective here, and obviously coming off of A1, the whole talk of everything was Jet Lawrence. And, is anyone going to be able to beat Jet Lawrence? And then you get thrown some crazy
yes.
conditions like this, and he walks away with a ninth place, loses the points lead.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's like funny how like rain and mud, it really does make it a like total shit show. And it seems like the people that like did well in the heats did like terrible in the main. People that did terrible in the main, did like well in the heats, and it was all over the place. So it seemed like it was almost just whoever got that good start, whoever, like got that good line, it was just their time. But it was all over the place all night. It was hard to predict. I mean, I think that this week was the lowest prediction point total for like both the leagues I'm in. I mean, barely anyone scored any points. So it was obviously people were finishing all over the place. So it was pretty crazy.
yeah, so I won my matchup, and I had the highest prediction point total of anyone in our entire league with 8, which is like pretty sad. I think everyone else got 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of impossible to predict people. But yeah, like you said, I mean, the start was basically just the decider for, I mean, almost everybody, because it's some of those slow-mo replays they were showing of the start. Anyone who was not in front, I mean, it literally looked like some slow-mo shots of something from like a war movie. It was just spray everywhere. You couldn't even see. It was like someone had been firing cannons or something like that. It was pretty bananas. But
And imagine having,
that being
16 guys in front of you just coating your freaking goggles with like mud. I mean, you can't see, you like
yeah,
can't ride. There's ruts freaking 3 feet deep. And if you get back in the pack, it's an uphill battle for sure.
I think I saw some videos of some guys that had been caught behind on the start, and they pulled tear offs like twice before they even got to the first corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's bad. But all right. So I mean, we can dive in here. So our matchups, our Founders League matchup, which we'll kind of just release publicly for everybody to take a look at every week. We've posted that on social media, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. If you want to take a look, it's on Facebook, Instagram. Highly recommend you go follow us on there, anyways, because that's where we're posting any updates with the series and Speed League itself. So go check that out. But both of us won our matchups this week.
Yes, we did. I had a fierce matchup between the 1-0 Whole Shot King, which is my dad, as I'm sure some of you saw on the Draft Party podcast. But I was going head to head with him, and he was shit talking me all day long. Oh yeah, trying to psych me out. But I ended up getting the win, not by too much. Luckily, his like Justin Cooper didn't even make the main, so that really worked out for me. But yeah, at the end of the day, I had 3 prediction points, which I like pride myself on like knowing these guys, knowing where they're going to finish, and I really take my time. And the fact that I ended with 3 is just pretty embarrassing, to be honest. But given the circumstances, that's pretty much how a lot of people's leagues went.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your team, you had some really out of place finishers. I mean, Cooper Webb 11th, Max Voland 19th, who Voland actually looked really fast all day, and it just didn't work out in the main. Even Oldenburg 10th, and then Garrett Marchbanks 3rd. Like these are
Podium.
not you'd kind of be stupid to predict a lot of these guys in the positions they actually finished in. So that makes sense. But yeah, I only got 8. I got a few prediction points for let's see, Plessinger, and then Levi Kitchen. I got pretty close on. Uh, those are the only ones that were really close. I picked up 1 or 2 prediction points here and there outside of that. So yeah,
But for you to have
it's
Sexton
chaos.
and Smith going one in the 450, one in the 250, I mean, that's pretty badass. I mean, that doesn't happen often, for someone to have like the number 1 overall guy in both classes. So that was pretty sweet that you were able to pick that up.
Yeah, and it's nice to pad my point total like that, but I didn't need the points for this matchup at least. John with 67, just another sad, disappointing performance for John. At least Hunter Lawrence made the main this time for him.
One thing that I do want to bring up, because like preseason, this was a big thing me and Kelly were talking about, is that we thought that first overall pick was going to be unfair, because like technically, if you kind of break it down, it's like they get Jet Lawrence with the first overall pick, and you kind of move down, and then they're going to end up with like RJ Hampshire, and just always be the first to like pick up that like top guy. So first pick seemed unfair. We're like, oh man, whoever gets first is going to run away with it. That is not been the case, because John scrubbing triples in like our league has totally shit the bed 2 weeks in a row, 0-2. And actually, I had first round pick in a separate league that I'm in. Same thing. I've like lost both races, and I'm just completely behind, scored 60, 70 points both times. So it just goes to show that first pick, fourth pick doesn't matter, as long as your guys are doing well. That's what's going to help you out. So who knows?
Definitely. Um, okay, so should we talk some 250s first here?
Let's do it.
I had a super good week in the 250s. Obviously, Jordan Smith, now the points leader, absolutely killing it. And by the way, I was looking at this too. If you look at the roster right now, the highest scoring rider in either class is Jordan Smith. He has 57 total points for Jordan Smith. That's higher than anyone in the 450s as well. So obviously, the 450s are going to be worth more once we move to East, and they're going to. Um, continue to score points while West isn't active. But yeah, it just goes to show, even though the 250 guys are, only racing half the time, when you have them, if you've got a good, West team and it's a West round, it's worth a lot.
Yeah, like some people like to use like the strategy where they stack one coast. Maybe they, with their draft picks, pick up like the top West guy, and then like the second best West guy or third best West guy. So they kind of, put in all their chips on the West rounds, which I do see some merit to that. I mean, personally, I like to kind of sprinkle some talent throughout my like whole team, but like definitely something to think about, if you want to for sure, you know, dominate those West Coast rounds. That's a strategy that you could use.
Yeah. To be honest, when I'm drafting, I most of the time will look at it, and if there's sort of a even comparison between how many points I'm going to get from like a top 250 guy versus a lower down 450 guy, I'll get the 450 guy every time, because I want those points every single week. And I'll take that, sort of point consistency rather than, oh, I'm going to wait, one of these coasts really heavy or something like that. I really am only going after the 250 guys when there's not as much availability of 450s out there. So, but teach their own. I've seen it work different ways.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has their own, draft strategy. Some seasons it like works, and you think, "Oh man, I'm a genius. This is how I'm always going to draft." And then you do it next year, and it totally doesn't work. So there is a lot of luck in fantasy. We've like said that before, but equal skill, equal luck. It's tough sometimes.
So one of the first 250 guys I want to talk about is actually Ryder DiFrancesco, who won his heat race by I think like 30 seconds or
He
something like
looked
that.
good.
Looked completely unassailable in the mud, and then I mean I think it was just his start in the main, but it completely fell apart, and he ended up I don't even think he finished. He's 21st place.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like some of these like newer guys like Ryder and like Prado, they're like coming out and like, you like see them do like so well in their heats and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's the mud guy. This guy's it, he's going to kick ass in the main." And it didn't really necessarily work out for like either of them, but at least, at least Ryder can maybe get some like confidence knowing, hey, look, even though it was a mud race and it was crazy out there, I like got my first, like heat win. So I mean, that's something to
Yeah.
try to build off of at least and try to stay on the positive side.
You know what's actually interesting too is 21st and 22nd in the main is Ryder DiFrancesco and Joe Shimoda. Both of the heat winners of the night ended
Yeah.
up, last and second to last. So yeah, a super shitty night for Joe too. That sucks for him because he was also looking pretty good.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, at least if you had them on your fantasy team, you got the 5 point heat win bonus, but yeah, that's about all the points that you're getting from them, during the race. So definitely a tough night for all the Joe Shimoda owners out there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just looking through the 250 results, Jordan Smith now points leader, first place. It was really fast in the dry last week too, and I mean, made it happen this time. I didn't even think he was actually going to be that good of a mud rider, but that ended up really well. And then I got the 1-2 with Smith and Levi Kitchen in second, who
Hmm.
actually almost got Jordan Smith at the line on the last lap.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great ride for Kitchen and then Marchbanks, podium. It was a great ride for him. Like we said, Nicoletti with the fourth. I mean, he was battling for that podium, and I was actually rooting for him. He's like one of those guys that are easy to root for, and also, it was like mishap last weekend with his bike not starting on the line. I was hoping that he could get that podium, kind of just to put the first week, issues behind him. But it was cool seeing him out there too.
Yeah, so good points for him. Yeah, I mean, again, super mixed up, weird results here. I mean, with Marchbanks on the podium, then Nicoletti, Carson Mumford with the top five, Anthony Borden, Josh Varese, Hunter Yoder. I mean, these are a lot of guys that often you're not even seeing in the top 10 that had some super, super good results. I mean, it's all the way down to ninth until you see the next really big name, which is RJ Hampshire.
Yeah, rough night for him as well. He, I'm going to get succumbed to the conditions. I mean, I'm not gonna make any harsh judgment on him for like getting ninth in the main. It just wasn't his night. Got some bad luck in the rain, but I mean, definitely when it's dry, he's still gonna be my top pick for like getting the first place spot, even with Jordan Smith on such a roll.
Yeah, Hampshire is going to be fine, and I mean, there is kind of an element of this of the mud race is just such a crazy throw the dice gamble. Jordan Smith came out on top this time. RJ Hampshire not so good, but he walked away with a ninth. He had some points. He survived the mud race. He didn't not finish, not score any points, or not make the main like some other big names that are out there. So this is fine. On to the next week.
Yeah. So then 10th Oldenburg. I mean, he probably didn't do as well as he was hoping. Same thing with him. He'll do better next week in the dry. And then in 11th, Beaumer kind of coming back to earth after his sixth place last week. I was kind of thinking, okay, this guy, he's going to come out and, try to perform the same as last week, maybe a little better. And he fell back down to 11th. Not what he was hoping, but I mean, again, it was rough. So
Yeah, I think he had some issues, some tip overs in the main, which I mean probably half the guys here
90%
did,
of people
but
did.
yeah, but yeah, Beaumer. I mean, honestly, he looked fine. There was nothing concerning or anything about him either. So on to the next week. I think he's going to be just fine. So any other big names we want to talk about from the 250
Yes.
main?
I want to talk about Nate Thrasher. He had a rough night from start to finish, having to go through the LCQ. And like sometimes, it's like, okay, and the heat wasn't really his heat, which is fine. Comes out, wins the LCQ. So I'm like, okay, is he going to perform in the main? And then he just, he just fell back and just started getting passed and not making those passes back. Like you see a name like Thrasher, you think, okay, maybe even if he did tip over early, he's just gonna catch back up, kind of like Roxon did. I know that we'll like get to him, but like Roxon, he like pretty much stalled it on the first lap, was almost dead last, and came back and got third. So I mean, someone like Thrasher, you're thinking, hey, he'll come back, but he just floated around that 18th spot the whole entire race and stayed there. So it was weird, actually.
Yeah, Thrasher. I mean, last week at A1 too had his incident there that he got carted off the track during the main event. He's kind of just been getting like a little bit pummeled by chaos a little bit, and probably just needs to kind of take a step back and I mean, he's a guy, he's won main events before and probably has those
Mm-hmm.
aspirations to want to be there. But yeah, you got to, keep it on two wheels and finish races first before you can, start to build on that.
Mm-hmm. And then another guy that I'm sure that pretty much every league someone has is Max Voland. He was back there in 19th, didn't get too many points. I know that I actually have him, so I was definitely bummed to see him back there. But moving on to San Diego for all these guys, and it'll definitely be better next week.
For sure. And so moving on to the 450s here. Um, yeah, again, it was super interesting, the 450s and how much all of that got mixed up. Again, seeing a lot of names up in the top results that you don't normally see. Um, Jet Lawrence, obviously ninth place, but he had a rough night the entire night. I mean, his heat race was bad too. And I was watching, and he had his the roll off system on his goggles got screwed up, and you saw it like the plastic thing trailing behind him. And they showed a replay at some point after that happened, and he actually went down and just like face planted right into the mud. As goggles are already, roll off system isn't working. You already can't see anything. It was just one of those, add insult to injury moments.
Yeah, no, and I feel like if you add up every crash or like tip over or a mishap out of anyone of the whole night, I bet Jet had the most of those. I mean, he's just so used to everything clicking, everything going good, just kind of having that style around the track, and you like can't obviously do that when it's raining. So he was pushing it a little too hard a few times, and it seemed like every time that they panned over to him, he was picking his bike up or had to, like maneuver like off the track back onto the track. So definitely a rough night for him, but secretly I was kind of enjoying it because I don't, you know, have him on my fantasy team, and B, it's kind of I don't want to see him just run away with every race. I mean, the rookie coming in and just sticking it to all the veterans. I at least want him to have to battle, and it come down to the last race in like Salt Lake City for who gets the championship. That's what I want. So I want to see a few more races like this from Jet just to make things even and more competitive.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, you would have to imagine that in a, race that's going to be as chaotic as this with all the mud that, um, the more veteran riders, I mean, that's going to come into play, someone who has been doing it for a longer time and can kind of, manage the chaos a little bit better and keep it on two wheels. Jet Jet, to be fair, I mean, has an incredible amount of like maturity and kind of rides smart like a veteran, more than you would even expect. But this is a big test of that. So I mean, you can't draw too many conclusions from it with it being so much chaos. But yeah, you did see some other guys. I mean, obviously Chase Sexton, Ken Roxon. Roxon, someone who's been around for a while, is just he kind of knows what it takes to get it done on some long mud fest main event that is just going to be a war.
Yeah, and Chase Sexton loved the chaos. I mean, what I loved from Chase is in the main on the start, the like gate dropped, and literally 1/2 second after the gate dropped, he already had like a 2 bike length lead from like
Yeah.
anyone else. He was just so off and on the money on that start, and he didn't end up getting the whole shot. I mean, obviously going into the first turn, it's all slipping and sliding. But I mean, he was just dialed in, and he does his like little thing, getting pumped before the race. He's always just getting
Yeah.
amped, and that's like cool to see. And he was just boom off the gate like that. But then Roxon ended up getting the whole shot. Like I said, ended up stalling it, went back to almost last. But yeah, freaking Chase was dialed in, focused. And I mean, I think that Chase has a fire lit and is not going to let Jet just like run away with this thing.
Yeah, and he actually said on the podium that he had made a lot of progress in the last week with the bike and was really excited and actually kind of disappointed it was going to be a wet race. Even though he won the thing, like he really kind of wanted to show the speed that he had in the dry and be able to show that off. So I mean, yeah, hopefully, at least for me, because I got him on my team, he can back that up next week in San Diego. Um, but yeah, his start was the way he got out of the gate was like one of the best maybe I've ever seen. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
timed it to perfection. It was like, I mean, he was going over the gate as it was falling.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, super solid from
Um,
Sexton. Uh,
Tomac, baby, back up there in the top
Tomac.
guys. Yeah, I was glad to see Tomac up there. I mean, obviously, people who drafted him early had their worries seeing him not quite where he's supposed to be, A1, but he was right back there. I mean, he's like actually one of those guys that I think, okay, it's a mutter. I'm thinking guys like Tomac, Plessinger, um, even Barsha. Sometimes I think is a mud rider. Even though he was dealing with the sickness and did not do well, but I mean, those are the guys you think of. Okay, they're going to do well. And Tomac you know, held up his reputation pretty well.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, how being a veteran is going to come into play in a chaotic race like this. That's, Tomac just quietly walk it in for a second place. But I mean, again, the big concern with Tomac from last race was just his, outright speed and longevity in the main event. And we really can't draw any conclusions from this either. This wet race is almost has no bearing on what his speed is going to be when the next dry race comes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like looking forward to like San Diego because it doesn't look like it is going to rain. So it's almost like I could see these guys in the pure form and then make better conclusions to how the rest of the season's going to go. I mean, like we said, you got to take this week with a grain of salt. So I'm curious, like Tomac and even Sexton versus Lawrence this like next week, how is that going to play out? Um, so like San Diego is going to be cool. I know that I'm going to be glued to my TV screen for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I'm just excited to get another dry race under our belt so we can actually draw some real conclusions about where
Hmm.
everybody's at. Because yeah, the mutter is just such a red herring. It's unapplicable, really. But so yeah, Tomac, Roxon filling out the podium with Shane McElrath. I mean, that's two Suzuki's in the top five. Name the last time that happened.
Cannot remember. Wasn't born yet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when was the last time that two bikes that you kickstart were on the podium? It's been a minute. Um, AP in fifth place. Dude, I was so bummed he couldn't pull out that heat race win.
Yeah, I was rooting for him the whole time, and it looked like he had it, but the mud monster came up and bit him. But Ferrandis ended up getting the win, which was my guy. So I was stoked for the 5 points. No biggie. Not going to complain. One thing with fantasy, and I'll be honest, is that if I didn't have Ferrandis on my team, I would definitely be like rooting for Plessinger to like win that race. But since I'm want those 5 points, I was going, come on, get stuck, Plessinger. So I was glad to see Ferrandis get that, but I
Yeah,
did feel bad for Plessinger because he like really deserved it. I mean, he was like in the lead the whole race, so he deserved it for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Obviously, Plessinger is known for being like a mud guy, and that the first lap of his heat. I remember so it was the second 450 heat and the first 450 heat, the whoop section before they flattened it for the main event. People were just all over the place. I mean, I think Hunter Lawrence skipped the whoop section twice
Yeah.
during his heat or something like that. So everyone was just going. It seemed like 2 miles an hour through that whole whoop section. And then the first lap of Plessinger's heat, he went through that section like looked like 3 times faster than anybody else had. Just riding legitimately looked like he was riding a bull.
Yeah, and that's
Hanging
kind
off
of
the
his like
back, the long
yeah,
lanky frame. So
that's
go
his
ahead.
riding style definitely. They were saying on the broadcast, some guys opt to stand on the pegs, trying to like absorb some of those bumps. Like some guys sit down and try to walk through, and like definitely Plessinger being one of the taller guys, was kind of opting to sit down at a few spots and just letting his legs kind of guide him and walking through when he needed to. So like Mutters, definitely it helps to be a guy more like Plessinger than like more of a shorter guy, kind of like Cooper Webb.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons too. One of the other ones is, I mean, you see in mud races more than any others, guys just kind of riding through those ruts with both of their legs stuck out. And if you're getting stuck or tipping over or something like that, having those long legs helps you. I mean, I know that from personal experience. I'm a pretty tall guy, and it's so nice. I mean, even if you're just trail riding or something like that, to have the long legs to save yourself from going over.
You're like 5'6" or 5'7", right, Kelly?
How dare you? Yeah. No, every time I get on a Southwest flight, I wish I was. But okay, so the person who actually won the heat race, Dylan Ferrandis, another super good night for Ferrandis, and this was one of your kind of sleepers going into the season because we had him ranked definitely outside the top 10, and he's been backing it up hard right now. I mean, fifth place last week and sixth place this week.
Yeah, you can't really complain about that. And I did end up picking him over Justin Cooper. Like, I know that the Speed League rankings, like me and Kelly spend a lot of time with preseason, making sure that, okay, this is exactly what we want to put out, put the Speed League mark of approval by those guys. And we did agree that Cooper probably has a little more upside, has a higher ceiling this year. But when it came to the draft, seeing a name like Ferrandis, and he's been doing this so long, and he has, I mean, just like so much experience in, mud, dry, late race, just like all over the place. He just seemed like in the moment, hey, I'm going to go with, maybe the lower ceiling, higher floor than the higher ceiling, lower floor guy. So I ended up picking up Ferrandis, and so far
Yeah.
it has worked out flawlessly.
Yeah, no, it's been a really good call, and I mean, part of the reasoning why he was ranked a little bit lower. I mean, there was a few things. I mean, last year with injuries, he didn't have a good championship result from the previous season, but also
New
moving from
bike.
a factory Yamaha team to now a satellite Honda team, a non-factory Honda team. That's potentially a big downgrade, but he loves the bike and he's performing super well on the bike.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure, that there's obviously pros and cons, probably a few more cons to having a non-factory bike, but it seems like sometimes when like people switch teams, maybe to a new bike, it almost is a fresh start, and a breath of fresh air, maybe getting some of those, like corporate heads off your back at the factory team, and you're more okay, I'm riding for my excuse me, I just choked on my own spit. Writing for myself, and you could kind of kind of just, light that fire, and you could just get out there and just have not a worry in the world. And I feel like that's kind of how he's riding,
Yeah.
like he doesn't have a worry in the world.
Yeah, I think that's legit too, and especially for the right type of guy that might not want all the pressure and hectic atmosphere that a factory team comes along with. I mean, Ferrandis, I think, was looking at retiring and then just kind of got this opportunity, and I mean, it's a little more laid back program probably for him, and that suits him really well. But yeah, Ferrandis doing really really well this year. It's cool to see. Behind him, Jorge Prado. Again, I've been subbing him in since the beginning of the year, and got the heat win tonight, which is super cool to see. And I mean, after the heat race, I was like, man, is this a guy that might actually end up winning the main event if he gets the start tonight. And
That is what I
it
thought.
kind of makes sense because he's the MXGP guy, and these conditions, are a lot more suited to his type. I mean, he's going to have a big disadvantage to a lot of the people that have been riding Supercross for a long time on a dry track, and I feel like that gets dialed back a little bit when the track has just completely gone to shit like it was.
Yeah, and like seeing him in the heat, I mean, he almost looked like nobody else. Like his style in the mud, like he just looked so in control, like he knew what he was doing. And everyone else, was getting all loosey goosey and all over the track. And he was just kind of just like taking his line around the track. And I was like, man, he's gonna win the main event. I was like, guaranteed Jorge Prado's gonna win the main event tonight. I mean, he's like a three-time MXGP champion. Obviously, the like mud style does kind of play more to him than the other guys. So I mean, really, all my chips would have been in on like Jorge Prado to win the main. I mean, he like, didn't do terrible with a seventh, but I mean, it wasn't anything that he's going to be like too stoked about. I would assume.
Yeah, well, I mean, first top 10, that's something to be stoked about. And the heat race win, I mean, they were showing the behind the scenes. I mean, he was celebrating that like it was a main event win. Which, I mean, for someone that's just coming in part time to do the first three races and, walk away with a heat win, especially when you have no Supercross experience before, was huge. That's awesome. I mean, that's he could, walk away from this, little stint in Supercross now and go home, and it will have been a success.
Yeah, but I mean, like heat wins. I mean, that's cool. Obviously, it's like be like stoked about that, and like in the moment when you're pulling off the track after the heat. I mean, you're stoked and you're hyped, and your whole team's hyped. But then to go from winning the heat to seventh, even though it's a top 10, like you said, it just doesn't seem as special when you get seventh after winning the heat. It almost seems like
Yeah,
okay, you should have,
I,
at least podiumed in the main.
yeah, and I mean, he's look as an MXGP champion. I'm sure his expectations for himself are incredibly high, but I'm sure also his camp over there is being pretty realistic about what their expectations are for this little dipping their toe in the water of Supercross this year before he potentially comes back maybe next year full time. And I mean, I bet when they were setting their expectations this year, I mean, something like a heat win may not even be what they really expected to see. That's a huge win for this guy.
And my wife was actually saying he was really cute when we were watching him on TV. So I got a little jealous there, Kelly. Um, so I don't really know. I'm a little worried he's going to try to
Okay.
steal my girl,
I see your
too.
trepidation with Prado
Yeah.
now. Yeah. This
Yeah, I
is
got to.
why I have to distract my fiance every time a Barsha comes on the screen.
She likes beards.
Apparently. Um, Adam C. and Cerullo, 8th place. It's a fine result for AC.
Yeah, solid. I mean, pretty much that's where he's at. A lot of the time around there in the eighth, ninth spot. I mean, one thing I could say about Adam, because I know that I've talked a little crap on him preseason and everything like that, but he is pretty consistently, consistently average. And I guess that is a big thing in fantasy to be consistent, so you get those prediction points. So I mean, I could say that he's consistently doing all right.
Yeah, honestly, consistency is a pretty big a move in the right direction for Adam Cianciarulo for someone who's missed a lot of racing due to injuries and just kind of one-off crashes that have ruined his career in a lot of ways. So I mean, consistency. Obviously he wants to be winning main events and battling for championships, but consistency is a step in the right direction, and it's definitely a step in the right direction if you're picking him up in fantasy.
Hmm. Definitely, I fully agree with that. Moving on to ninth, like we talked about, Jet Lawrence, not where he wanted to be, or most people probably didn't predict him down there in ninth. But it was a rough race, like we already said. So I mean, no worries. He'll be up there on the podium next race for sure.
Yeah. And then Hunter made it to the main this time, his first 450 main, top 10. Cool. That's something to walk away with. I'm sure he's frustrated as always that he comes in one place behind his little brother, but he'll have his day.
I actually made a side bet pre-race when I saw the like conditions and everything. I have another buddy who actually has Hunter Lawrence, and he was talking crap on him, saying, "Oh man, I shouldn't have picked him up. You know, he can't even make a main." And I bet my buddy, I said, I think that Hunter's going to beat Jet this race. I'm like, mark it. Hunter's going to finish better than Jet. I was close. I didn't quite win the bet, but it kind of proved my point to where like Hunter's going to be right there getting top tens all season. I mean, you know, dry mud doesn't matter. Hunter's going to fix his mistakes, and he isn't a wasted pick, and he's going to score you points throughout the season.
I'm not totally there yet with Hunter because we got to see it in the draw. I expect it, but I mean, just with the amount of other names that are in the 450 class, I mean, he has to seriously lay down some speed and prove himself to be a consistent top 10 guy. So for me, it kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. 11th, Cooper Webb, not really what he was hoping for, you know, an A1, you know, kicked ass. And then in the mud, it kind of ate him up a little bit. Finishing in 11th, you don't really see Cooper Webb back there too often. So I'm sure that he went back and do his trailer a little bummed out.
Yeah, but I mean, again, mud race, could have been good, could have been bad. And Webb's case, it's an 11th, some points, move on to the next one for sure. Um, yeah, we'll see some more. Hopefully, when we're back to the dry, we see super fast Cooper Webb again because I mean he was looking so strong in A1, and I mean literally like one of the only guys that can put it to jet. So I mean that's what I want to see next week. I would love to see some Webb jet battles.
Speaking of guys that were up top and now are not, in 12th, Jason Anderson, I was thinking, I'm like, hey, when last week he did so well, maybe, he's just going to ride that, and be up top, getting top fives again. Didn't really work out for him. I mean, he had a few issues in the main. But yeah, you're like used to seeing all these guys, Webb, Anderson, normally up there, and even Barsha down in
Yeah.
17th. So, I mean, like we said, we're going to say it over and over again because it's just so apparent is that this race, you can't really extrapolate too much from it. It's all just a total shit show. Next week is going to be like all these orders, but like reversed, it's all these guys are going to be on top. And then, guys like McElrath and, are going to be down back where they should probably be. So, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah. I I mean, one guy I hope we see the flip from is 22nd place Malcolm Stewart, who had a complete shit show of a night. I mean, yeah, he was down on the before even the whole shot line, and that big accident that happened before the first corner. So I'm sure he's ready for luck to swing his way a little bit because we hear so much good stuff about like how much speed Malcolm Stewart has and how he's should be winning every single race. But we got to see a little more luck from him and hopefully it actually presents itself.
These past 2 weeks I feel have been, cruel for Malcolm Stewart. To come back and he's just ready for this season. I'm sure he has all of his thoughts and prayers and all all going to kick ass. And week 1, week 2 were absolutely horrible. So it does hurt me to like see him struggle because I really like him as a rider, but yeah, he like really needs to turn it around because I'm not used to seeing him down there, and I'm sure that him and his team aren't either. So hopefully he could straighten up and do a little better, San Diego.
Yeah, and I mean we had him ranked around the same area as like a Hunter Lawrence or even an Aaron Plessinger or people like that. And yeah, Malcolm versus Plessinger right now is that's a knockout fight.
Nowhere close.
Plessinger's definitely the guy. And when I was picking up in that part of the draft, I mean, there was some consideration like, oh, people are saying how fast Stewart is. Should I go for that? And yeah, right now Plessinger's the guy for sure. I mean, is there any expectation that that could flip at some point?
I don't see it. Honestly, it's like I'm not seeing anything that would point me in the direction of that's going to flip. You know, I mean, maybe if like next week he like comes out and then gets a top 10, or even if like Plessinger beats him, you know, say that Plessinger gets 8th and then Stewart gets 10th, you know, maybe at least I could see a glimmer of hope where I could think, okay, you know, maybe he's like going to turn it around. But I've seen absolutely nothing that would make me think that he's, you know, even worth a, you know, a top 12 finish. I mean, he just hasn't done it.
Yeah, I do expect that, you know, when his bad luck levels out here, he should be at least like a in the top 10 guy. I think so, at least. But
Should
yeah,
be.
you got to get through the chaos first. And you know, yeah, even if that's true, you know, Plessinger is right now seeming like a top 5 guy every race. I mean,
Mhm.
he's turned up the speed. So yeah, he's the dude right now. Okay, so you know, we want to talk about, you know, predictions and some recommendations, but I mean, there's not a lot that we can, you know, really change based on the results of this week. So I mean, yeah, going into next week, I'm not really, you know, thinking I'm going to adjust anything specifically. You know, watch practice, watch the qualifying, see how that finishes. Obviously, you don't want it to put too much weight on that, but in terms of some possible opportunities of people to pick up or sub in on your team. Next week is Jorge Prado's last race. I've got him substituted in again already. I've actually got him subbed in for Justin Hill, who didn't even make the night show at San Francisco. So Prado, I think, you know, hopefully, you know, after a decent amount of success the last couple races, could be shooting for a top 10 for that last race and go out with a decent bang. He's good. And then in 250s, the seventh in the total points for the 250s right now on Speed League is Anthony Borden on the Bar X Suzuki, who obviously had a really good finish this week in San Francisco. But I mean, yeah, he has more Speed League points right now than Oldenburg, Voland, Shimoda, like a lot of other big names. So not 100% sure that's going to continue, but if you know, got your 250 class and, you know, got kind of a garbage third guy and might be looking for someone to switch him in with, there's a good chance someone like that will be available in your league.
Yeah, and like someone that I, you know, was kind of looking at in the 450 class is Shane McElrath. I mean, he right now he has more points than Barsha, Cooper, Hill, Lawrence, Dean Wilson, Malcolm Stewart, Christian Craig. And like I feel like that's one of the guys that are a trap where like you might see that, you know, someone who like maybe didn't, you know, like watch the races and think, okay, you know, McElrath, he's 11th in points. I'm gonna sub out, you know, Dean Wilson for McElrath. I don't think that that is a smart decision. That's just, you know, something that over the 2 races, like it just so happened he had like an LCQ win A1, and then this week he like got 4th. That is not going to keep on happening. So I mean, someone like McElrath in 11th, I wouldn't take the bait on that one. I just stick with some of these guys that are more tried and true and hope that the dry conditions are going to make them do better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how desperate you are for, you know, a final 450 guy. Because yeah, I mean, there's nothing else available. I could see picking up McElrath, and you know, he's someone you probably want to, you know, predict in 16th place or something like that. Would be my guess going into the next round. But yeah, he's overperforming right now. But congrats, you know, good work, McElrath. You know, he's working hard out there.
Yeah, yeah, true. We'll see. I mean, I guess there hasn't really been any like main guys who have gotten hurt yet. Luckily, that's great. Like, I hope it goes the whole season, but we know that that doesn't happen ever. So, I mean, he'll be like one of the guys that I look. You know, if a like main guy gets hurt and like he's available, okay, cool, I could pick him up. But yeah, I just wouldn't, you know, sub out like I said, someone like Wilson or even Craig. I mean, Craig's had a rough start too, but I wouldn't sub out Craig for like McElrath either. Personally, I don't know if you would, but I wouldn't.
No, not at this point. I mean, yeah, Craig's again not performing well either, but I still would have hope for him to get some better finishes than I think McElrath if I was putting them head to head. So San Diego, this week, um, super excited. Who do you got? Who do you think's winning San Diego? Are we back to Jet?
I'm back to Jet. I mean, like I said, I don't want him to like run away with the championship, but I could definitely see a world where that happens. So I mean, I'm not gonna try to take some hot take, this, that, or the other, but I'm gonna say Jet first, Sexton second, and then Cooper Webb third. That's gonna be my top three prediction for San Diego.
Would you put your money on, let's say you had to put your money on either Jet winning or someone besides Jet winning? Where would you put your money?
um, I honestly think Jet's going to go and just win. I just think Jet's going to go out there and he's already pissed off because he got ninth. He's going to go out there and just win the race.
All right, I'm putting my money on someone besides Jet. I mean, I believe Jet. If I had to pick one person, it's going to be Jet. But there's so many other heavy hitters out there. I mean, Sexton apparently has got some good speed now. Webb. We'll see if Tomac can do anything. I definitely wouldn't put my money on him. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much chaos in Supercross. I'm sure Jet is going to win a bunch more races this season. But I'm also just putting my money on the chaos of Supercross and a lot of other fast guys, being able to capitalize on a good start when Jet gets a bad one or something.
We could do like a cheeseburger wager right here live on air, Kelly. I have Jet, you have everyone else, and the loser has to buy the other one a cheeseburger next time that we see each other.
And then, yeah, the next podcast, I just eat it on camera super
Yes.
loudly into the mic.
I eat it on camera.
All
One
right.
more question that I
All
wanted
right.
to
Well, yeah, we'll see how this plays out. Okay.
one more question, and I know that we're like running out of time. This they always seem to go a little longer than we want. We're like shooting
Yeah.
for around 30 minutes, and we've been 45 minutes. But hey, we're already over, so why not go over a little more?
It's
Question
easy to
for you.
talk shit about Supercross.
Question, and I want you to really honestly think about this and give me your answer. Okay, so the track obviously last night was a complete mess. Okay, say that you were riding on your bike around that track that was perfectly pristine. Okay, like your lap times are on just a perfectly graded track crew
Oh,
just got off on a dry day. What place do you think you would have like qualified if you were riding on a perfect track and then they were riding on that completely demolished mud pit?
qualified? Oh,
Or I mean,
geez.
even just like uh,
Yeah.
say that it was a race. I'm like, where do you think you would have been?
Yeah, this is going to be more revealing of my actual writing ability because the question here is, on a dry track, like I'm probably not going to have the balls to hit the triple or really charge a whoop section, and if I did, I might mess myself up super bad trying to do it. So if I keep it on two wheels, yeah, against them on a wet track, I mean, I would hope I could actually be up in top times, but I don't know. It's so hard to say.
Kelly's been like riding for his whole life. I mean, pretty much me and Kelly both got dirt bikes when like, we were 6. I mean, we've like never ridden professionally. Obviously on the track, we aren't the fastest. I mean, not the slowest at the track either, but we are by like no means professional. We are just diehard fans that have been watching and like loving Supercross since I could even remember. Back when me and Kelly would go to Supercross races when we were 6 years old, 7 years old, and just idolize these guys. So we know a lot about Supercross, but we aren't the fastest Supercross riders in the world. I guess that'd be fair.
Well, and I mean, also that being said, I mean, neither of us have ever done any supercross either. We go to outdoor tracks. It's a totally different style of riding. I mean, neither of us is training to charge whoop sections or do anything like that. So the problem is for me, I mean, a lot of the sections, even on a dry track, I'm going to be rolling like it was a wet track.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So,
That's my
I don't know. No, I hope I would be up there. I always do the same thing with MotoGP too. You know, whenever it rains, it's like, would I actually be able to go as fast on a dry track as these guys can in the wet track? But no, I mean,
no.
I feel like I've gotten to the point of motorcycle riding where I'm good enough to understand how truly alien the best guys are.
Mhm. Even the guys
And it's a
that
fun
get,
place to be because you actually you appreciate it.
even the guys that get like 22nd in the main, who you see, oh my gosh, they got lapped twice. They suck. I mean, for those guys at like any track, freaking Lake Elsinore motocross track or any, track where there are like intermediate and like beginner
They're
riders, they are
killers.
by far the fat. You'd be like, oh my gosh, who is that? You'd be like, that right there, son, that's Alexander Nagy. And like he would just look like a
That's
freaking,
right.
yeah. So it's crazy, like the talent these guys actually have.
100%. Yeah. Well, maybe the AMA will endorse this test. We'll do put Kelly on a dry track versus all the Supercross riders on a wet track. That'll be a fun video. But
My guess is that
all
you
right, we
would
got to wrap
not
this
get
thing
top
up.
10. Okay, that's it. That's it. Until next time.
I'm not going to argue. Until next time. It's good talking. We'll see you next week after San Diego. Peace.
See you.